Flamy, what's happening?
Hi, Andy. Just a regular old Thursday hanging out with you on Zoom
Yes, we do this every Thursday.
every Thursday. This is very normal for us.
Yeah, well, I guess it's been not even a week since I saw you
That's
last.
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm getting lots of good Andy time these days. It's really fabulous.
lots of.
Saw each other in Austin and then in Illinois and Kentucky. And I'm seeing you again, right? Well, at Folk Alliance.
Folk Alliance. Yep, yep.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So you get a
Perfect.
few month break.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yes, those are fun shows, and
Oh my gosh.
you know, yeah, we met through Kerrville Folk Festival, and I've met so many great friends through that, and it's a cool community.
I loved it so much. I went into that. That was like my first experience doing something that was really just designed for like the songwriters and really the industry. It was like very much an industry insidery event. It feels that way, even though I know like a lot of people come and just enjoy the music and are consumers of music. Like Kerrville still felt like I was just meeting people who'd been doing music their whole lives, at every turn. And it was
Right.
really fun for me to get to feel like part of a community of songwriters.
When I feel like every time I check social media, you're playing a show with a Kerrville person. You're doing something with
Yeah.
Jackson, who I just did a run with, and I just keep seeing stuff. So that's really cool.
Yeah. Olivia and I have got a couple shows coming up this next week. And of
Awesome.
course, I just spent 2 nights with you and Sadie and Hallie, and that was a blast. So
Yes.
yeah, you could
So
just make a whole career just touring with Kerrville people.
wouldn't that be nice? Um, so couple things recent for you. Fortune Teller, your newest
Yeah.
single just came out on the October 24th, right?
Yes. You know the date better than I do. I
I
was like,
fact
was that
checked.
the date? I love it. You do your research. Yeah, it was actually supposed to come out on Friday the 13th. I was so excited to try and do like a spooky season drop, but we just couldn't get it all ready, with enough lead time to get it out on that date. So I pushed it. It still made it out before Halloween, so it's still spooky season, but yeah, that song just dropped.
And how's it been received?
Um, People either seem to adore it or absolutely despise it. And you can pretty much draw those lines between like um, evangelical Christians and then the rest of the world.
Well, hey, that's not so bad then, huh?
No, no, no. I'm not too worried about it. It did really well. I got all the way up to so I don't know. For your listeners who may not know, I am a drag queen. I perform. I'm a singer-songwriter who performs in drag.
Yeah.
I am also weirdly placed in the like Christian music world. And there's weird backstory to all of that we can or cannot go into, whatever you want to do. But just so those are the facts, like drag queen, Christian music, like singer songwriter. And I dropped this single uh, October 24th, as you knew, and it made it all the way to the number 2 spot on the iTunes Christian charts, which is a cool thing, like it's a chart and it's there and it's cool. Like yes, iTunes are kind of it's a bit of a relic of, the like first decade of the 2000s when not a lot of us buy our music as an MP3 anymore. We mostly stream. But iTunes is still there and you can still buy MP3s, and when people do, if enough people do, then you get on the iTunes charts. And so that happened to me over the summer with another song of mine, and so I thought I'd try to repeat that success. We did not make it to number 1 because, damn it, Reba McEntire loved on a song that got played on The Voice, and so everybody went and bought that song, and I just couldn't quite crack it. So it's
Well,
all Reba's
what does
fault.
Reba know?
What does Reba know about music? Uh,
Uh,
yeah, we love Reba, for the record.
yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I want to get into all the iTunes stuff, but to go and just everything that's been going on the last few months, but to just go back a little bit, Talk about your upbringing a little bit, how you first got into music and, your upbringing with the church as well. I know it was a big
Yeah.
part of your foundation.
Yeah, I mean, like so many of us, I grew up in the church, and church was my first outlet for music. So whether that was, singing in choirs or doing what we called special music, like back in the day, you would go to the Christian bookstore and you would buy your favorite song, but buy it on a special cassette that was just instrumental, and it was called like praise tracks, with an X or something like that. And you would like pop it in your sound system or boombox or whatever your church had in the 90s, and you would sing along to it. And so I grew up pretty much exclusively listening to that kind of like 90s Christian music. I wasn't allowed to listen to pop music. I kind of grew up in a strict family. Um, so yeah, that was my whole world, and that was what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a CCM superstar, like obviously Amy Grant, Michael A.V. Smith, Stephen Curtis Chapman. These were like the big names in my world. And you know, as I grew up and discovered that I was queer, that I had a queer identity, that dream no longer made sense or was possible, because queer folks are not welcome, are not accepted in the world of Christian music. And so, I've lived a whole lifetime between then and now, but started doing drag during the pandemic. It was just something I had always been curious about, and uh, I don't know. It just snowballed. It snowballed. I started painting my face in my bedroom, and the next thing I knew, I was recording a whole album as my drag character, Flamy Grant, and I decided to release it in that contemporary Christian genre because it was kind of about it. It not kind of. It is. It's very much about like my spiritual journey, my upbringing in that really kind of high demand religious evangelical world, and how I got to where I am today as this like spiritually inclined drag queen. And so yeah, that's the quick and dirty version.
And you mentioned that your dreams changed a little bit when, or you thought they might not be possible when you realized. When did you realize that you were gay? How old were you?
I mean, I knew I was different by like third grade,
Yeah.
but I didn't have words for it. I was so like my world really was so small and so protected from experiencing anything outside of our little tiny Christian culture. So I didn't have words for what being gay was probably until middle school, or maybe even high school. Well, maybe middle school. I'm sure I knew what it was by middle school. But like, yeah, I like by third grade, I knew that I was not um fitting in the same way that all the other boys in my class seemed to have no problem fitting in. And I wanted to hang out with the girls. I wanted to, you know, I had always had the impulse to like play with my mom's makeup and stuff, but that was not okay in my family. I got kind of in trouble for that and shamed for that. So, I spent most of middle school and high school just like learning to cover and learning to mask and pretend I was straight and pretend I was just like everybody else, or what I thought everyone else was like, because I just didn't know that there were other queer people in the world. I didn't know there was a whole queer culture. I didn't know any of that because I just was, like I said, protected from it. So, yeah, pretty
Did
early.
did you try to stray away from it though, intentionally for a while and say, well, maybe this is just a phase or something?
Oh, yeah. Like, I hoped against hope that it was a phase. Like, I desperately wanted to be straight because to me, it felt like that was the only way I was going to have a happy, fulfilling life. I had no representation of queer people. I didn't know queer people could be happy. In fact, I was told by like family members and my church and stuff, like it was like, yeah, gay people like all go to hell and are miserable, and there's no such thing as a healthy gay relationship or a healthy gay marriage. Those just don't exist. So
This
I
is your
was
family too.
sorry.
This is your family too.
Yeah, yeah, my family was, I mean, this messaging was coming from my parents, from my grandparents, from everybody. So it wasn't, I honestly believed that, I went up through college, even like I went to a Christian college. So even there, like the opportunities to learn about queerness and a queer culture were pretty slim. So it took a long time. Like late bloomer is just a like theme through my whole life because I feel like I was just so kept from actual what the world was is actually like.
Yeah. Yeah, would there have been I mean, what would you have thought as a young Christian in church, elementary school, middle school, if you now had come into that church and performed in
Yeah.
drag? What would you have thought of yourself then? Would you have been like, "Oh my gosh, my hero," or would there have been some conflicting emotions there?
Yeah, it would have been conflicting. I would have been of two minds about it because, on the one hand, I mean, I was super drawn. Anytime I could get any kind of information at all about, wait, like there's other gay people, like, lesbians are a thing. What? Like, I remember being so fascinated by Ellen when, kind of the firestorm around her coming out and her character coming out on her sitcom in the 90s. And so I like secretly taped and watched that show, even though I wasn't allowed to. And um,
Really? You weren't allowed to watch Ellen?
no, I wasn't allowed to watch Ellen. So many things I was not allowed to watch. Um, Dawson's Creek was another one that I was not allowed to watch, but I snuck and watched that. I loved that show, and it had some like gay storylines, and so I remember being drawn to these things when I could find them, obviously. But I also had that internal voice that had been kind of instilled in me to say, "Oh, this is bad. Like you shouldn't be watching. You should be running from this." So I think I would, if I saw like myself come in or a drag queen come in and sing the songs that I'm singing today, like I think part of me would have been very intrigued and curious, and then another part of me would have been really scared to pursue that curiosity.
Right.
So that's just a thing that only time can really time and exposure to other people can really change for you.
And how does your family feel now? Is your family on board with your career now and with you as a person?
Uh, um, Depends on which family member you ask, but a lot of them are really cool. A lot of family members that I didn't know were like we just didn't have a close enough relationship growing up for me to know that they were like totally like LGBTQ affirming and like awesome. And then there are some family members who definitely do not get what I'm doing, do not understand, and don't really want to understand. And um, so, it's everybody's on a journey. I was on mine for a really long time. I'm still on mine. I mean, it took me years to be comfortable with myself. So, um, if my family members are curious about it, I'm willing to talk to them. And if they are judgmental about it, then I have no problem, being like, yeah, okay, well then you don't get access to me or my life. Like that's a boundary for me. You have to at least have some kindness in your approach, some kindness in your spirit towards queer people. And if you
Yeah.
don't, then I don't have time for that. I have plenty of chosen family, which is kind of the beauty of being a queer person is that you grow up and you find your people. And uh, so I don't really need the whole family to be on board.
And I mean, the time between the pandemic when you recorded this album
Yeah.
as your drag character Flamy Grant in college. I mean, what did you do in that entire time? You were a worship leader for a long time, right?
Yeah, I was. I mean, starting in like high school, I taught myself guitar,
Uh-huh.
and I went to a Christian high school, so we had on our student government association, one of the positions was chaplain. So you had like president and vice president and secretary, and then chaplain.
Oh my
And I
gosh.
ran for chaplain and won. And so my senior year, I was chaplain, and I would lead our worship services at school, and that's why I taught myself guitar was to be able to do that. And from there, college, I did the same thing, a lot of worship leading. And then I moved to Reno, Nevada, like right out of, I dropped out of school after 2 years, moved to Reno, Nevada, and had a day job, but was also working on the side for a mega church there, leading worship. And I mean, I just kept that going for a good 2 decades. The first decade was in more like evangelical conservative churches, like what I grew up in. And then as I came out and became more comfortable with myself and all of that, I moved into churches that were affirming and accepting of queer folks. And but up until literally like last year, like a year ago, basically, a little over a year ago, I was still leading worship at a an inclusive, affirming church in San Diego where I was living at the time. And so yeah, it was a, a lot of worship songs on Sunday mornings.
What made you stop doing it last year?
I would have stopped earlier. Honestly, I was kind of over it and done, except for I was just really loyal to that church community. They were really good people, and I had good friends there. And I just felt, you know, like it was really just the relationships that kept me there. But the reason I stopped was because the church folded, it closed. It was kind of a casualty of pandemic, and not in a really bad way. Like it was an intentional thing. Like we decided, yeah, I think this church has run its course, and like let's close and I'll move on to new ventures. But I was personally, internally, really happy to finally like I'd been wanting to stop being a worship leader for a while, or at least doing that kind of quote unquote ministry. Um, and it couldn't have come sooner, frankly.
And did you write songs during this whole period as well?
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of spread myself across a lot of different like genres and like just places where I would perform my music. So I would write music for the churches I led at, and so write like what people would probably call worship songs. A couple of them even made it onto Flamy's record. Like Good Day and I Am Not Ashamed were songs that we sang in my last church. But then I also off and on would pursue like my solo songwriting career. I would perform under the name Matthew Blake, which was my government first and middle name, and then I also was in a band called Girl Boy, which was with my partner in that band. She's a a white girl, a lesbian rapper from like Central California. And we just met and became friends and we did karaoke one night and we were like, huh, should we like do something? Should we blend our what we do? And we did. Like she would rap and I would sing the hook, and we had a good run in San Diego. We never like got big or anything, but we had an
Yeah,
audience in San Diego and played all
cool.
the time and had a great time. We recorded like 2.5 albums together.
Wow.
So yeah, it was
Two and
fun.
a two and a half. Does that mean it's not done yet, or is an
Well, no,
EP?
just like one was an EP. Yeah,
Okay, okay. And you seem to have you seem to have an affection for karaoke nights.
I do. Yes. Yeah. One of my first gigs in drag, when the world started to reopen after pandemic, was I got a hosting gig for like a Friday night karaoke um, at a cabaret bar in San Diego. So that was where I learned to basically be a drag queen and host events and be cheeky and make sure everybody's having a good time. And so I loved that. It was a lot of fun. I still love to go to karaoke nights. Oh, as you know, as we did at in Belleville, Illinois, we did, right?
Yes, in the outskirts of St. Louis. Last Wednesday, we all went over there after the show and did karaoke.
We sure did. And I like dragged you out there and you were like, I don't know this song. And I was like, everybody knows who was Wilson Phillips. Everybody knows Wilson Phillips. Get out here.
And I didn't. I'm ashamed I didn't know the song.
But it doesn't matter with that song. You just have to have a good time.
You
That's
know
it's
what?
kind of the point of like all karaoke. It's like be a little drunk, have a lot of fun, then everybody else is gonna have fun.
Well, you know what? It took me about 3 minutes to getting used to being up there, and then the song was over, and I was like, you know what? I would do another one. But that was it. That was.
That was it. Uh,
Did you have any other careers that you had considered getting into? You know, you're involved in the church as the worship leader. You're doing music on and off, doing different genres. Was there something else that you ever thought I might do that instead?
I mean, I've always had a day job up until about 2 months ago. So I've worked mostly in nonprofits, and I've done a lot of marketing communications, some like program development, but mostly, yeah, mostly the communication side of nonprofits. I've worked for like a theater, for animal rescue organization, like cultural programs, that kind of thing. So, but those were never like that was just always the things. Those are the things I stumbled into to pay the bills. I never like dreamed of being a nonprofit. I never dreamed of any of the day jobs that I did. A lot of them were really good, and I had a great time and have good friendships from them and everything. But it wasn't like the passion of the dream. I always wanted to do something with music. Like that was really the only thing from the time I knew like basically who Amy Grant was, like that you could have a career as a singer, and
Mm.
at the time, obviously, singing for Jesus, like that's all I wanted to do. Um, so I mean, I guess in college I kind of flip-flopped a little bit. This is part of why I dropped out of college, was because I didn't know I didn't have like clear direction on what my major should be or anything like that, because I was going back and forth between like French. My mom was a French teacher, and so I loved French in high school and college. And then music. At one point I was like a French major, and then I went to music major, and then I went to theater major, and then like English major. So it was just all over the place in terms of that stuff. But the arts have always like held my interest the most, whether that was music, sometimes theater, but mostly music.
And so when you made this decision to take to be Flamy Grant
Yeah.
and record this record, you're saying it happened during the pandemic. That's when you first got into drag seriously as well, correct?
Yeah. I went in drag in Halloween of 2019. That was like my first time doing full drag. Um, and it was, for a laugh, but I had such a good time that I was like, oh, this is kind of fun. And I went to like a couple house parties in drag. And then, yeah, pandemic hit. And suddenly I was sitting at home twiddling my thumbs, in between work assignments. And none of us had anywhere to go. We couldn't leave. Like, so I just logged on to YouTube and started watching makeup tutorials. And
Well, so for Halloween and those work parties, you said it was just for a lark at first.
yeah,
How did it make you feel as opposed to how did you expect it was going to make you feel?
I mean, I thought it would just be like any other costume that I've done over the years, just like it's just fun. That's part of why we all love Halloween. It's the fantasy of it, it's the fun of it. But there was something more to that. I saw it as an art form, like the creativity that goes into learning how to change how you look so dramatically, like change like the makeup artistry of it, the costuming of it. Wigs are their own art form, like styling a wig, it's its own thing. And I was just really drawn to all of it, and it made me feel like powerful, it made me feel like brave in a way that I have not always been able to access.
Mm.
And so I think there was and it also just connected me back to it. I tell everybody like drag for me started as inner child work. Like it connected me back to the young kid who was getting in trouble for like ruining my mom's lipstick tubes,
Mm.
and like letting me basically give permission to that kid to like follow through on those impulses and not feel shame for them. And so yeah, it was like a really dramatic change for me, and really like profound experience when I started doing that. And it was just in my bedroom, during pandemic. And there was never any intent to become a drag queen. There was no intent to like have a whole second career in the second half of my life where I didn't even think about like bringing music into it at first. That came later. And so it was a time of like just pure exploration and seeing how things made me feel.
How did you first incorporate music into it?
Well, it started really as so I lived with another couple. My husband and I house shared in San Diego because it's San Diego, and unless you make real good money, you can't afford to live there. So we
Yeah.
house shared with another couple who were both musicians, and We logged on the first week of lockdown. We decided to just log on to Facebook and live stream us singing some cover songs. And a bunch of our friends showed up, and that was birthed our we called it Heathen Happy Hour. And so every Thursday night we would, yeah, just log on, live stream. And like we got more professional as pandemic went on, like everybody did. We bought lighting and had good mics. And so by the end, they were sounding and looking pretty good. But I think it was the second or third week of that, like I just decided to show up in drag because I had, started painting my face, and I was like, let's just do this again for a lark. It'll be fun. But we did cover songs just every Thursday night, like themed. We would have a themed night and say like, I don't know, royalty and Rihanna. So it'd be like
Yeah.
songs by Queen and Rihanna songs or whatever, like any song that had King or Queen in it or whatever.
Yeah.
And uh and so I was just singing songs in drag to a camera, like to Facebook. And that was the first time I like, was doing music in drag. But even then I wasn't like thinking like, oh, this could be something. It took a few months, I think, of doing that before I was like, this is really fun. And I feel like it makes me a better performer, or at least a different performer. I can perform in ways that I just never felt comfortable as like Matthew Blake. And I can just be a little more rowdy or fun or whatever, like cheeky. And it just opened up new like mental like synapses were firing, I guess. I don't know, like neurons were firing. So over time I don't know when I like what the thing was that made me decide to record a whole record as Flamy, but um I don't know. At one point I went to my roommate who was a music producer, and I was like, hey, like how would you feel about like producing a little EP for Flamy if I had some songs. And that was the other thing. I think I started writing
Mm.
in Flamy's voice, and that's probably more than anything else what opened that door for me, was realizing that writing um in the voice of like not Matthew Blake but just this other character, like it made me probably a better writer, but for sure it just gave me like new ways to say things.
Yeah.
So I don't know, that it was just kind of a very slow natural evolution to get to the point where I was like, oh yeah, let's
Yeah.
try to record some songs.
So when you put the album out, it's been about 13 months now. It came out at the beginning of October of last year. When you
Mhm.
first put it out, how was it received? Just at the initial couple months.
Yeah, I mean, it did not get a ton of attention. I mean, had not I didn't have any strong ties to the music industry. I didn't know how to uh I didn't know how to market it, so it really was just me like word of mouth, talking to friends telling friends. But it still for me it did really well. Like it did better than any of the music I've ever released like prior to that, like more than Girl Boy, more than Matthew Blake stuff. And I think that's mostly attributable to the fact that I did have a couple like videos go viral on TikTok during the pandemic. So Flamey had like a pretty sizable TikTok following,
Yeah.
and I tried to leverage that as best I could, and so it did okay. Nothing crazy, nothing major, but like I was pleased. I was like, oh wow, I can't even remember like what the streams were in those first few months, but it was a lot of streams for me.
Yeah. And so as it's simmering down a little bit, or maybe we think it's simmering down, right? Initially, you have, because we have that initial release period, right? And then you sit there and you go, okay, now what?
Yeah,
Um, but several months later, now there's 10 songs on the record, I believe, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
um, the final song, "Good Day," you've got Derek Webb singing on it with you.
yeah.
And what group was Derek Webb with again? I'm sorry, I'm forgetting.
Derek was in a group called Caedmon's Call, and they
Okay,
were a big folk Christian band like in the 90s, early 2000s.
so you've got Derek featuring on one of the songs with you,
Yeah,
um, and you said you had it at the end of the record because you wanted people to feel empowered at the end of the record,
yeah.
um, and that's why you placed it there. I don't. I mean, maybe you didn't know that that was going to be the initial song that popped off, right?
Yeah, no.
And what ended up happening, I mean, I'll let you tell the story, but just from what I saw on your channel when this was all going on, and this was a little bit after, like, I think right after Kerrville.
Just after, yeah, pretty
Um,
much.
you were one of the Kerrville winners, uh, and that's where we met. And then pretty
Hmm.
much right after that, do you say is it Foyt? Is that his last name?
Yeah, I think that's how
Yeah,
you say it.
Sean Foyt or somebody. But somebody who is a worship leader or something um, said something negative about the song. In I guess collaborating with you, Derek Webb
Hmm.
collaborating with you, said
Yeah.
something negative about it on Twitter. Um, I th- I think in hopes to put you down, but it kind of ended up having an opposite effect. So first off, I mean, what summarizing what was that tweet and how did you initially feel when it happened?
Yeah. Uh, so yeah, he just basically, I don't know what his goal was other than to just, well, yeah, I do. Of course I do, because this is the kind of person who like uses fear to rile up the kind of conservative right-wing base, and fear is a powerful motivator, especially for that group, because they just are afraid of everything. They are I don't they're just afraid of everything. So he was talking about Derek, who was, he no longer identifies as Christian or in a Christian band or anything. Like, that's not part of his current identity, but I guess Sean didn't know that. And so Sean was like, well, this is the end goal of deconstruction, which is kind of the buzzword for people who are thinking critically about their inherited faith for the first time in their lives. He's like, this is the end goal of deconstruction, like a Christian artist collaborating with a drag queen. So, like, that was just funny to me because, like, in that scenario, I was actually the Christian artist. Like, I was the one who had released my record in the Christian genre, and Derek was like no longer identifying as Christian. But I I mean, it didn't make me feel any kind of way because I was at that point I was really used to getting, like, despite the fact that the album hadn't popped off the way it has since, like, I still got plenty of hate comments, and like, just being a drag queen, and especially one who was like singing Christian music or Christian music in the Christian genre, like, I was very used to getting people who were like unhappy with me doing that. So I didn't really think anything of it other than, like, it was Derek who pointed it out to me and was like, hey, like, Sean Foyt's actually kind of a big deal in that world. Like, he's got 500,000 followers or something like that. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, I'll have some fun with it, like I do with a lot of hate comments. And I just wrote back, oh, this isn't the end goal, babe. We're just getting started.
Mm-hmm.
And he replied to that, well, it's a good thing that hardly anyone listens to you or cares what you do. And that was when I was like, okay, like, that's a
Game
challenge,
on.
right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, game on. So that was when I went to, like, my TikTok followers, where I did have, a pretty sizable audience, and I was like, hey, y'all, here's what's happening. Like, we got this like MAGA worship leader coming for me on Twitter, and he doesn't know about you. I don't think he doesn't know that I've got, like, whatever it was, 50,000 TikTok followers at the time. And what do you say we try to get my song to chart? Good Day, this song that I have with Derek that had already been out for 10 months. Let's see if we can get it to chart on the iTunes charts. And I only knew to do that because I had another friend, an out queer artist whose name's Semler, was the first out queer artist to ever have a number one song on that chart. And I was like, well, let's see if we can follow in Semler's footsteps, and I'll be the first drag queen to ever have a number one Christian song on the iTunes chart. And honestly, I didn't know how it would go. Like, those things can flop real hard. It just depends on the algorithm, like whether TikTok wants to show that video or not. But fortunately, it took off, and literally the next day, like 24 hours later, I had the number one song on that chart, which was crazy.
Wow. 24 and you were vulnerable in how you asked too. You said, "Hey, this is a small army and it's a long shot, but here's my goal. Here's why it's important to me. here's why, and it was very, I think people respond to honesty, right? And it's a very
Yeah,
vulnerable and honest video, but 24 hours, and then bang, number. And
yeah,
do you know at all statistically what that looks like? I have no idea how many plays gets you a number one
yeah.
iTunes.
I'm just now getting, because there's such a delay on the reporting back as an independent artist, through your distributor. There's such a delay. So I'm just now getting like some of that data back on my DistroKid to see, and I haven't dug into it yet. I mean, I know like streaming wise, like I jumped to like, gosh, I can't even remember what that month my Spotify streams were, but they were in like the tens of thousands. Whereas like up to that point, I had like 300 monthly listeners or something like that. So streaming wise, I saw a massive jump, but the iTunes chart is just literally based on whether people will spend that 99 cents to download the MP3 or not. It's not
Right.
based on streams. So that information I'm just now getting, and I haven't dug into it yet to see what it actually was. But definitely like my social media follower counts, skyrocketed. My streams skyrocketed on Spotify and Apple Music. So it had an impact. It had a really big impact for sure.
And along with having a positive impact, I mean, I know there's been a lot of haters, a lot of people who have said some really terrible things.
Yeah.
They've said it to entire church congregations
Yeah.
right down the road from my house. It's uh there's been a lot of, good and ugly, right, in terms of
Yeah.
how it's been received. Um do you I mean, what is the effect of that on you? Is it always just motivation to continue on? Do you have days where you think, "Ah, man, are you kidding me? Not today."
Yeah.
Do you get close to a breaking point with it ever?
If you had asked me that question like a week and a half ago, I could have answered honestly, no, it's always like fuel, it's always motivating. I can almost always laugh at it when there's those crazy haters and all the crazy messages. And then I don't know, like I think I did hit a threshold over the past like 7 to 10 days, and there was one girl in particular. It had been a hard day of just like a lot of comments or whatever, or a hard week or whatever. And then this one girl like posted this video that's like addressing the Flamy Grant controversy, and I was just like, what is this like
Yeah.
controversy? I'm literally just a songwriter recording and putting out my music. Like,
Mhm.
what is going on? And I watched her video, and she like just immediately launched into the just the language I've heard a million times, but something about her calling me an abomination that day just like did get to me. And like I made a
Mm.
response video that I've since taken down, because like I woke up the next morning and looked at it and I was like, oh, that's not the cutest look. Like let's that's not how I want to
Yeah.
react and respond to these people. So yeah, I guess I didn't think that I had a I don't know. I've always thought of myself as like just being able to handle that stuff fine, and like it doesn't affect me the way it affects a lot of people. And so many people are like come to me and with that question. They're like, I'm like, oh my God, are you okay? Like there's so much hate. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I love it. Like let's
Yeah.
spin it into gold. Like make
Yeah.
lemonade. And but I don't know. I guess I have a threshold too, because that day I hit it and I was just like, these freaking people. I all I want to do is just make my music. Like I don't want to have to fight a. I don't want to feel like every minute of my existence is this like activism or having to respond to this stuff and take a stand. Like it
Right.
just does get exhausting after a while.
Yeah, I can imagine. And you say you just want to make your music, and I mean, everybody does. I mean that makes music probably, but um, there's there's a story too. That's in and there's a story behind so much music that does blow up, right? Is there's a
Yeah.
story and it's timely, but something you've done a great job too, I think, is accepting it and doing such a great job of presenting who you are. And it looks very authentic because it is, right?
Hmm.
And you've been able to, I think, balance the two worlds of haters and praise, and also just trying to do your thing, and
Yeah.
um, you know,
Yeah, it's wild that I appreciate you using that word authentic, and I hope that people do feel that way because obviously drag is a art form that is an exaggeration and some might say it's fake, like that I'm not a woman. I'm painting myself to look that way, but something about drag while being this art form that is, changing you into something else. At the same time, it kind of, well, RuPaul always says drag doesn't change who you are, it reveals who you are. And I think there's
mm,
some real truth to that because I feel more at home and in my body and just like able to be authentically myself as Flamy sometimes than I do like when I'm just me. So it's it's an exaggeration, but it's what it's exaggerating are like my truest feelings and my truest sense of self. So it's yeah, it's authentic in that way.
I was going to bring up one of your songs, and then I ended up reading about it through, at first through the Rolling Stone article that I actually just checked out this morning. But I'll start off by talking about the song, Esther, Ruth, and Rahab, and you played it. I've heard you play it before. In fact, was it one of your Kerrville songs? I don't even
It
remember.
it was, yeah.
Okay, so I first heard it at Kerrville, but you played it both nights that we played together in St. Louis and Cincinnati last week, and with Sadie Gustafson Zook and Hallie Neal. Shout outs.
Yes. Shout out.
You played the song, and there's the line, and I love lyrics. As a songwriter fan, as a songwriter, I love stuff that's either very poetic, meaning just imagery, but then there's a line that's just bang, right? We're not like, it's just very, I don't know if I'm explaining this well, but something that's very poetic, but then there's a line that just is very, there's no, there's nothing to unveil there. This is what the line means. And,
Yeah.
and that song has that quality when you get to the line. And I guess the lesson there was God would only hear a prayer when it came from someone with a cock.
Yep.
The rest of the song is, and not that it doesn't rhyme. I don't mean poetic in a rhymey way. I mean
Yeah.
poetic in a imagery way. And then, or in a, I'm at a loss for the word I'm looking for. But that line is, you can't mistake what that line's about. You can't me interpret it this way and you interpret it that way. The line is what it is.
Yeah.
And I it makes the song cut, right? I want songs that cut in my life. I'm a songwriter.
Yeah.
And so I love that song. And then the full circle of that is that I was reading the Rolling Stone article this morning, and then reading some other articles by other people kind of in response to the latest headline, which is, and you were chatting about this last week when we met up at the coffee shop. You had just chatted with Rolling Stone.
Hmm.
Um, they were asking you about your album, which was in the Grammy category for Best Christian Album, getting tossed out, but they didn't tell you why. They just put it in a different category,
Yeah.
a vocal category. Is that right?
Yeah. Best pop vocal.
Well, they best pop vocal, which is also an honor, right? But
Yeah. I'm right up there with like Taylor Swift and Olivia Rodriguez. That's great.
yeah, exactly. Um, but anyway, you kind of found out why, right? It
Yeah.
seems like they responded. And why is it that you got moved out of that category?
Well, the Grammys. So yeah, we submitted the album in the best contemporary Christian album category because that's the genre I released it in, and um, and we didn't hear anything, and then the day before the first round of Grammy voting ended, I got a screenshot from an Academy member who like showed me my album, and the screenshot was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to vote for you in Best Pop Vocal." And I was like, "Cool, that's awesome. Wait, what? Best Pop Vocal? What happened?" So yeah, we didn't know why it was moved. I mean, obviously I had my assumptions, but we tried to figure that out. We tried to look for guidelines in the Grammy submission, the description for each of those categories and everything. There was nothing. There was like, it didn't say anything other than like this category recognizes achievement in contemporary Christian pop, Latin, rock, like just a bunch of genres. So no other guidelines. And so it was weird. And, we suspected that there was some like religious gatekeeping happening in that like screening committee, that Grammy screening committee. Although maybe they were a screaming committee too. I don't know. Wasn't there. Um, but yeah, they so that's why we kind of like wrote up a press release and like sent it out to a couple people, and it was, I think it was actually Paste magazine was the first one that like got a response back from the Academy and said, "Oh, it's standard practice for this committee to move albums that have explicit language out because Christianity, I guess, like
Christians don't curse.
Christians don't curse," which is untrue. I know quite a few of them who do. And so it's an unfortunate reality that we've got that kind of mindset about Christian music. I'm not surprised by it. It's not shocking. And I obviously, first of all, I never like even imagined that I would have a Grammy eligible album. Like that's so I was not making this record for awards. That's not what it was about. But, after the year I've had, it felt like this would be a cool place to try and see some representation in a Christian category. And it felt like the Grammys might be the place to do that because, you know, maybe they're not the most progressive body, but they're certainly more progressive than like the Doves, which are the Christian Music Awards, or some other things. So it was purely a another effort to like blaze a bit of a trail and try to have some representation of queer people in Christian music. And unfortunately, even the Grammys do not appear to be ready for that.
Well, but at the same time, it seems like everybody that's tried to push you down or oppose what you're doing has added flames. I would say no pun intended, but I'd been planning it for the last three sentences. Add flames to the fire. And I mean, that's happened, right? I mean, with Sean Foyt, that happened. With this, it happened. I mean,
Yeah.
the Rolling Stone found out about it and wanted to write about it.
Yeah.
So in the grand scheme of the movement, it seems like it's a positive thing, even if
Yeah.
it doesn't win this year, right? It seems like it's a positive thing in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Like having the conversation is the point. And so it would have happened obviously if I had been nominated, there would have been conversation about there being a drag queen nominee. And it's happening because I wasn't nominated. So yeah, either way, having the conversation is the point. Like in my view, we have to hold these institutions accountable for the way that they have completely steamrolled or ignored or, you know, intentionally or unintentionally done harm to the queer community, to people who love this music. Like I grew up loving this music and I'm queer. And I know so many other people who are just like me in the same boat. And so it's, first of all, like a bad business decision to like disregard or hurt people who love your product. Like um and second of all, it's just not representative of Christianity in America. Like I know evangelicalism is loud and I know it's very power hungry and like politically motivated, but that's not the only, like evangelicalism is still a sect of Christianity. It does not represent the entire religion, and there are so many people out there who are progressive and inclusive and affirming, and um, we should be represented in those categories too. It should not be dominated just by the like Christian nationalists. So that's why I think it's important to have those conversations. And yeah, why I'm really grateful that Rolling Stone and Paste and others like decided to pick up that story.
There's Do you feel at all that you might be one of the founding artists of a new niche market, of a new movement? I mean, it's um do you think about the fact that you're leading something that might empower um a drag queen who's in 6th grade right now, not even doing it yet, doesn't even know they want to, or maybe they do and they feel afraid, but a 6th grader that is going to come up because of something that you've a path that you've started creating and have mainstream success from it.
Yeah, like I mean, first of all, I'm not on the front lines of this thing by any means. There are plenty of
Sure.
artists who have come out, like Christian artists who have come out, like Jennifer Knapp did this a decade ago.
Mm.
Like I said, Semler, my buddy Semler got a number one as an out Christian artist before I did. Um, there are there is like a movement right now. It's small, but it's mighty of like artists who are kind of like settling into this space of like spiritual music, but very queer or just very um not the traditional like praise and worship music that dominates like Christian radio. Like it's people who are asking hard questions or like expressing doubt in their faith and yet still kind of staying in that space. So yes, like there's this movement of that that's happening, and yeah, I'm very much part of it. Like I'm getting to know who those artists are. I'm hanging out with some of them. I'm playing shows with some of them. It's really cool to see what's happening and to see the hunger in audiences for this kind of music too. It's really really cool. um the drag, like I guess yes, the drag piece is the part that I guess I'm proud to like be on the front line of, I
Mm.
guess. There's not really um another drag performer who's doing specifically what I'm doing right now. And I do hope that it like gives, yeah, like blazes a little bit of a trail for that 6th grader or whoever. Or they don't have to be in 6th grade. Like I was 37 when I started doing drag. So like maybe there's a you know, a drag performer who's just like a little bit younger than me who's like always wanted to explore music and like this would be a genre that they'd want to explore. So yeah, I hope that there are more drag artists who get to do, you know, follow their heart, follow their dreams, because of what we're doing.
Do you sometimes feel that you're constantly talking about how you're presenting your material as a drag queen rather than the material itself? I think the artists, we all have this ego thing where we're like, wait, but I have a new album out. Like, can we talk about the lyrics of track 3?
Oh yeah,
Do you feel that uh, to an extent?
I do. And you know, it's like I've now been very fortunate and privileged to have like two pretty major pieces by Rolling Stone about me, but in both cases they're kind of about what's happening to me as opposed
Right.
to the art I've created. So like I think I said this to you when we were together. I was like I look forward to the day when Rolling Stone writes about my music, you know. Which manifest, right? Like I believe that can still happen. But yeah, so there's a lot of responding and reacting to all of the situations that my existence just creates, just by the fact that I'm doing what I'm doing, and less opportunity to talk just about the music directly. But there have been some, like there have been like several podcasts where like that's they just want to kind of like you did, like let's talk about this lyric. And that's I've those have been really fun, and I notice them because they're different from what I usually get to do or what I'm usually asked about. So it's really cool when the music and the art itself does resonate with people. So yeah,
Ha-
You know, somebody's gotta, you have to do that work first of like being the first drag queen to be in Christian music. Like I get it. And then maybe the next album, like maybe I'll get to talk more about the music itself, you know.
yeah, yeah. Well, have you had anybody? eh, Have you had anybody that maybe did not approve of what you're doing, but then go listen to the album, actually give it a real listen, check out the lyrics, and then come to you and say, you know what? This is great, actually.
Yeah, actually, I mean, I've had what has happened a lot has been uh I've gotten calls from a lot of like progressive churches who want to bring me in. And a lot of them have been like, I mean, they're progressive, but they're still like a little freaked out about the drag component. They're like we don't know about that. That's new to us or whatever. And so I've been a lot of people's first encounter with drag, and that's been really cool to have those conversations with people who are like, I came not knowing what to expect or a little skeptical or thinking, oh, this is like going to be such a gimmick. Like drag is such a gimmick and there's not going to be any real artistry here. You're just like trying to get attention. And then to get to talk to people after they hear me play or after they listen to the record and hear them say, wow, actually, like I like your songs. That's been a really cool thing. I don't know if I've had like the experience of someone who was like vehemently opposed to me and then like later came back and was like, oh, you changed my mind. Um, but I've definitely had like the people who were just unfamiliar or ignorant of drag in general, like come around and be like, wow, I'm kind of interested now. Um, so yeah.
What's next? What do you see happening over the next year or two?
Ooh, year or two. Well, the next year, I hope is getting this new music out. So I'm just starting the process of, um, well, there'll be a Kickstarter soon to fund the next album, and so be recording that in the spring, and hope to get it out summer or fall next year, and then I mean, just continuing to tour, like hone my craft and my chops on the road. I really love it. I love it a lot. It's so fun. It's exhausting, but it's like so rewarding to get to connect with people live. And I'm going to the UK next summer, so that'll be really fun. And then,
Touring?
sorry.
Touring?
Yeah, well, yes, I'm working on it. I'm booked at a couple of festivals, and then so working on building out a tour around that.
So cool.
Yeah, very excited for that. So yeah, just continue to make new music and tour, and you know, I have some like long-term goals and visions too. But well, a day at a time, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Did we leave anything out of the last 50 minutes or so? Anything else you wanted to mention?
Oh no, this is great. Thanks for you're such a comprehensive interviewer. You're like got the whole story in this nice tight package.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you for taking the time. And if you don't mind, stay on the line with me for one sec, but in front of our audience, thank you so much, Flamy Grant, for chatting with me today.
Thanks, Andy. It's a pleasure.